Hi. Thank you all for coming out. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to see you all here too. I run a design studio in town. Clicky, clicky. Okay. About a year ago, we relaunched our site, put it up online. This is it behind me. And pretty soon after that, a link to the site was put up on this other site called Designer News. Designer News is a forum where web designers and user experience professionals and front-end developers come together to talk about the web, talk about their practice, and critique websites like ours. So what did they think? They didn't like it. You'll note this is the best comment. Number one. What didn't they like about it? Okay, well, primarily, it's this rollover experience. You move your cursor over a link, use preview images, pop up, boop, 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 boop. They're all behind the text, behind the cursor. You can't touch them. In fact, you can't get to it all. As you move your cursor, they move away. It's really frustrating. I get it. I did it, you know. Designer News can be kind of a cesspool, but they had a really good point. We'd built a website that was not welcoming. We built a website that was, that had a high bar of entry. We built a website that, in their words, had poor usability. Usability. I hate the word, usability. I hate the word because it is squishy. It's sort of poorly defined. And when I think about it, when I try to boil it down to its essence, all I can kind of come to is ease of use. Is the website, is the interface easy to use and easy to understand? But for whom and to what end, you know? That's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the web, and I want to talk about what happens when we make everything easy to use. And to answer that, I want to start with this idea of period style and talk about period style on the web. Period style is a term in art history that refers to a moment when style kind of coalesces around an idea, a moment in history. So for instance, if I'm talking to you about 20th century architecture, international style, you might, in your mind's eye, see something like this. If I talk about graphic design patterns of the 1980s, you might see something like this. And the web, of course, has a period style. When I talk about the early web, you see something a little bit like this. Now, period style on the web is tied up in technological developments. I mean, you know, it's that way for every medium, right? It's that way for painting or sculpture. But on the web, it's a little bit closer together. The earlier web looked like the way it did because of limitations of HTML. You were pretty much working with text and image and tables. These are all table-derived layouts. CSS hadn't yet been fully implemented or wasn't available. 15 years later, the period style of the web looks like this. Big splashy image at the top, maybe a video, some icons below that, some text below that. I don't have to describe it to you. You're looking at it and you lived through it. And I think it's predominantly because of this insanely popular front-end framework called Bootstrap. Bootstrap was developed in 2011 by a couple of people at Twitter. A front-end framework is this collection of code, of HTML and CSS and JavaScript, that provides a foundation on which developers and designers can build a website, so you didn't have to start from scratch. Bootstrap was intended to be an internal tool at Twitter. It allowed Twitter to produce web applications very quickly and to iron out inconsistencies from site to site. It made it more efficient to build websites. It was very useful, so useful that the developers made it open source, released it to the public. It became very popular. I'll note, I was too cheap to buy the paid plan for this website, so this only goes back to 2014, but trust me that it tracks down and down and down. Bootstrap hit the industry at a time of remarkable growth in web applications and an explosion of the mobile web. You know, there were a lot of new businesses, they were coming to life online, their users were accessing their websites on their phone. So you had to have a website that worked from desktop to mobile. Bootstrap solved that problem right out of the box. It also provided a library of design elements to use. They had menus and buttons and drop-downs and so forth. So if you're building a web startup, and you know that the need to get to market first is very real, and you know that your users are all on phones, why wouldn't you use Bootstrap? It got you there easy, and it worked. On the other hand, Bootstrap tended to look and behave the same way. It ironed out, inconsistencies. But you didn't have to make Bootstrap look like Bootstrap. You could build a website that looked sort of however you really wanted it to look. And for those of you bracing for a rant, those of you who know Bootstrap, Bootstrap's an amazing tool. But it's hard to deny that there was a product style that came about as a result of this framework. You could even purchase a template. If you didn't want to build on top of the framework, if you wanted to have a website sort of given to you to drop your content into, you could purchase it from somebody. And your site would look like all the other product sites. Now that sounds a little dismissive, and maybe it is. But I also mean your site would look like a product site. It would look like it came out of Silicon Valley. It looked like it belonged there. That lent it a legitimacy, Your site looked real. And as Bootstrap grew in popularity, its usage widened. The WordPress community took it on. Templates for WordPress were built on top of it. You soon started seeing your kid's school or your favorite author or your family reunion. These websites were all being built on the same framework, and it had the same look and feel. Why does it matter? Well, there's a certain accepted wisdom that says homogeneity is easier for the user. The more familiar the interface, the less cognitive load, the less new things you have to process at once. Why does cognitive load matter? Well, as the argument goes, users grow accustomed to the arrangement of an interface. They grow accustomed to a set of behaviors, to a common, look and feel. Then they do what you want them to do. They'll take the desired action. And those are the metrics at play. Did the user do the thing? Did the website lead to conversion? Did it convert a visitor into a customer? A conversion is when a user takes this predefined action, whether they are buying the product or giving their email address, clicking on the right page. Conversions make or break a business. So yeah, make that button look more like a button and put it where the user expects to see it. When design experiences are new, they can be confusing. They take a moment or two to process. Homogeneity reduces friction. Friction. Talk is full of jargon. Friction. Friction is this term, another jargony term, that I actually really like. I like it because it's so tactile. Friction feels like what it means. It slows you down. It's the resistance that requires that you put more effort in. Now, friction can be as minor as an unusual font choice, or significant as having to click through 10 different screens in order to check out. And since learning an interface anew is full of frictions, you can see why one might say of the web, above all else, make it easy to use. Yeah, make it homogeneous. And that kind of sounds reasonable. But it is also why websites often look the same. It's why this product web style, this period style, dominated. So to go back to the earlier question, what happens when usability, when ease of use is the key metric? What happens when we reduce friction at all cost? What do we lose? Well, what's the web for anyway? I want to quote something here. This is from Eric Spiekerman. He's a very prominent type designer. This was left on as a comment to a Medium article entitled "In Defense of Homogeneous Design," so, seems relevant. He's basically arguing that rather than continually rethink an interface from the ground up, rather than build anew, why not stay within the parameters that every user understands? Learning from old dudes, as he puts it. Sure. In other words, the web should be an invisible container for content or for calls to action. Make it like a book. But the web's not a book, It's not a storefront either. Although it's like these things, it's unlike them too. It's a medium that we operate from within. It's a medium we inhabit, like our work and our play and our identities are being developed within designed environments online. And those designed environments, the experience of the interface, shapes the way we process information, shapes our identities. A criteria of judgment that prioritizes frictionless design, gliding users to predefined endpoints, reduces the medium into a series of consumer efficiencies. I mean, that's, I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but still, it's there. I should also apologize for this use of American Apparel in Second Life. I thought at the time it was illuminating. I wonder now. Okay, so I've been lumping ease of use in with some ideas like consumer efficiency and frictionless experiences and so forth, but ease of use is fundamentally important, you know. The web is full of terrible, frustrating experiences that do not take the user's needs into consideration. This is how I pay my parking tickets, frequently. Ease of use can be and should be empowering. For one, it allows for more open access to critical information. This is the centralized information center for the UK government. It's economic, it's clear, it's accessible to readers on all devices, including screen readers. Now, although criminally, I don't think it's available in any language but English. Ease of use also allows us to process and manipulate complex data. This is a interface to parse through legislative action in various terms of Congress. And of course, there's this. Ease of use allows us to make sense of the vast and sort of unmanaged internet. You know, nearly 20 years later, this feels like second nature, and it feels like a gimme the design decision. Yeah, give me the search bar, give me the button, that's all I need to see. But at the time, it was a pretty radical gesture of user-centric design. And the genius here, yeah, is a reduction of friction. They took everything else out. In a medium of interaction, in a medium of designed experiences, frictions and inefficiencies are the moments that don't speed us along, right? They're the moments that keep us from achieving an endpoint. And so you can see why product designers would say, first and foremost, make it easy to use. But friction is also the jump that catches you off guard. Friction is what makes for differentiation and memory and meaning. It's the mental space, for better or for worse, between the user and the endpoint. Friction is what allows a user to process an experience rather than just consume it. Ease of use and efficiency matter, but if they're the sole criteria that we use when building the web, you know, we're diminishing the medium. Well, okay, so what else is there? What other criteria might we use? I want to build on a set of ideas from the designer and developer Laurel Schwolst. This is from a course syllabus that she taught at Yale. Is it specific? Is it memorable? Does it turn idea into form? And I want to add to this one more point. Does it benefit the user? Now, I use these criteria in my practice when we do interactive work, regardless of the client, regardless of the context or purpose. Now, they don't preclude ease of use. I mean, you can probably imagine ease of use benefits each of these in different ways. Now, they're a user-centric measurement of experience, though, as compared to outcome. I want to walk through them. Is the design specific? Is the interface built for its purpose? Does it understand its audience? Does it reflect its context? Allow me the very true joy of introducing you to the very best website on the internet. McMaster-Carr, they're an industrial supplier, meaning that they're selling products to factories and workshops and people who know what to do with tools, right? The fact that I just said that implies that I am not one of them. The site's efficient, but it requires a lot of processing. It's like, look at it. This is the homepage. It is small thumbnails of black and white images that are hard to differentiate from one another, really small text. This is the homepage. You come here, you need to understand what's going on. But McMaster-Carr is dealing with this specific audience. Like, this response to the literacy of its consumers is what makes for the interface to be usable. What provides for complex, for like a fine-tuned control over complex information. All right, so there's this, and then there's this. And they feel at first glance worlds apart, but they're really similar. This is the Yale School of Art's website. Instead of maximizing function, the Yale School of Art maximizes style. And style, at its most valuable, is a very specific vernacular. It's a coded language that allows you to speak directly to other people fluent in that language. The site itself is a wiki. It's open to being edited by anyone in the community, you know, students or faculty or administrators. It has a manner of operation rather than a controlled design, rather than a controlled look. You know, it's about the way that it thinks and works rather than about the way that it looks. And an experience like this tilts towards the wild. It tilts towards the unpredictable, towards, to a certain extent, the ugly. And this culls, rather than grows its audience. Now for the school, this is great because this actually reflects the school's attitude. It reflects ideas of what art can do. And if you are a prospective student and you see yourself in this website, all the better. This school is probably for you. And if you don't, it's probably not. This website helps to filter out prospective applicants because of its specificity, and not in spite of it. This is also very specific. This is Medium. Now here, specificity isn't about the audience. Of course, Medium's audience is widespread. It's diverse, sort of. You know, this is the interface you see when you are creating a post on Medium. Medium is intended for a purpose rather than for an audience. Its purpose is to be a storefront of texts. Now, because its purpose is so specific, it guts everything else out. It builds an interface specifically for what it's intended to do. It's lovely. It actually is like a fantastic tool. Is it memorable? Well, memory has some obvious economic value, right? Like a company wants to be remembered. A company wants you to think of it before you think of someone else. And that's because brands depend on mental models of value and differentiation. This is The Guardian. It's a newspaper online and in print in the UK. The site for The Guardian solves problems, news problems on the web, in a unique way. It certainly did at the time when it first came out. Since then, it's been a little bit copied, but you know, you get the idea. It built a site that was new. It built a site that worked across all devices. It built a site that didn't reflect the object it came from. It didn't look like a newspaper the way that, for instance, I think the New York Times, which is also a great site, did at first when it first came out. The Guardian solves these problems, and it carves out a distinct identity in doing so because of its differentiation. When I think of an online newspaper, I think of The Guardian, even though I don't really read The Guardian. And I do that because it's built for the medium. It feels of its world. Now, making it look new or unique isn't the only way to make something memorable. This is the bookmarking site Pinboard, designed by Maciej Ceglowski. Its aesthetic is brutal, purely functional. It has very little investment in user-friendly design. It's also kind of janky, like it doesn't work across all devices. It's not mobile-friendly. But it's mine. It's a tool that I learned to use. In fact, because of the struggle it took in the very beginning to use this tool, I feel much closer to it. I know its ins and outs. That's mastery, you know, and that mastery brings me joy. When I was trying to think of the most memorable web experience I've ever had, I thought of this website, donottouch.org. It's an interactive video for a band called Lightlight, designed by this Dutch group Moniker. It starts out with this note. Please note, we are recording your pointer. Please follow our instructions. Then the video begins. There's some short clips. You see animated cursors flying around the screen. Your cursor is slightly bigger, and you can sort of play along. And after a moment, it's not that far, but after a moment, you realize all of these cursors are evidence of past users. They weren't designed. They were what the people before you did on the website. That's joyful, that experience. And something like that, memory, I think, is proof that an experience was experienced as compared to simply processed, simply consumed. Engaging with it requires and rewards attention. Does it turn idea into form? Something fundamental to design, I think. I spoke earlier about how the web isn't just a seamless, invisible container for content, but another way to say it is that an interface, an experience, can have as much meaning as the text or the photos that you put into the interface itself. Even the simplest website conveys an idea. bees.com. This is, as the name implies, full of bees. It's a looping GIF of Oprah with bees. She is seen on loop and fills the screen, right? It's like a total state is this GIF. The idea here is specific, immediate, and the design is not there. But not having the design there is still a design decision. And the behavior of that, like imagine if at the top it said like Oprah's new GIF, and at the bottom it was like share. Your experience of this would be diminished by ridding everything else of the design, by making it total and complete. This contributes to the meaning, even if the meaning is absurdity. Now, the more we shift the balance from content to interface, the more expressive we can make the interface, the more adventurous and artful. This is the website for Printed Matter. It's a store in New York City. They sell books in person and online, although this looks nothing like Amazon. It functions similar to Amazon. The site calls these colored boxes tables, and it can take a moment to process what you're looking at, but they're tables. They're like physical tables looked at from the top down. They're interfaces for the site. They're relational collections of material, and each book is shown to scale with the books around it. This is beautiful. I mean, for me, these decisions are not just like useful, but they contribute to an idea of the space, of printed matter, the store, of the value that printed matter places on relationships and collections, on the physical object quality of these books. Like if this was just a scrolling feed of standardized book covers, it would lose its meaning. But the decisions made in the interface reinvest the content with more meaning. This is a portfolio site for a designer and developer, Jake Dow-Smith. And unlike the printed matter site, it's not really aggressive in its design language. It's pretty hands-off. In fact, the most overt visual element that you see on the screen is work he's done for other people, for clients. This central browser in the middle with all these different tabs. Each tab is a different project. But those projects aren't just seen, they're experienced, because each tab is a live browser. You use each of the projects on his site. It contains them all within. What this reminds me of is the fact that online, in an interactive experience, meaning and form aren't just seen. Like form isn't just the way the thing looks, or the color you use, or the visual design language. Form is the experience. It's the behavior. And here, the idea and the form are like one-to-one. Does it benefit the user? Okay, well, so this is sort of an ethical question, and it's a little bit stickier because of it. And it's probably easiest, I think, to understand it in the negative. Does the interface mislead the user? Does it trick the user? Do the actions lead to outcomes that the user doesn't understand? Because this isn't about the ethics of the content, it's about the consequences of the interface behavior. Now, exploitation in the interest of conversion, which I talked about earlier, has led to some terrible web experiences. For instance, the slideshow, which you can find here somewhere if you look close enough. Slideshows like this are a holdover of earlier days on the web when page views were the coin of the realm, right? Page views is what convinced an advertiser that your site had value. So slideshows were used to game page views. Each additional slide basically added to an additional page view, and it was all garbage. The whole metric was garbage. And they were, for the most part, terrible user experiences. That's because they were not designed for the user. And there's money to be made in exploiting tendencies like that. We have a word for it. We call them dark patterns, right? A famous example is the way that LinkedIn tricked new users into basically giving their entire contact list to the site, at which point LinkedIn would email everybody and be like, come onto the site, join me on LinkedIn, regardless of whether those people were on LinkedIn or not. A dark pattern is frictionless design taken to its logical conclusion. And it's not surprising that these patterns would be popping up, would emerge, when the metrics for success are growth and user acquisition. Platforms reduce hurdles for sign-up, which is why you see platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram get you on, or attempt to get you on, as quickly as possible and bring everybody else along with you, because what they value is growth. On the other hand, there's the web forum meta filter, which works really hard to keep you out. This is something the writer Neil Dosh spoke about recently on a podcast called Track Changes. It's really phenomenal, and you should track down both that podcast and that episode. But I thought it was really compelling, and I wanted to talk about it here. When you sign up for Metafilter, when you attempt to sign up for Metafilter, it brings you to this page. It has you read about the code of conduct. It has you read about the site's values. It then tells you it's going to cost you $5 to join. It then tells you it's going to take a week before you can post anything to the site. It is pure friction. It operates to slow you down. Now, this isn't so much a benefit for the individual user as it is a benefit for the user community. $5 isn't nothing, but it's enough of a hurdle that it keeps out people who would be there to attack. It sort of ensures that you want to participate. Neil Dosh compared this to Twitter. Twitter's sole economic imperative is growth at any cost, right? Twitter has no real shared values, so you combine that with growth and with a service that enables direct communication between strangers, and that frictionless design is a recipe for a really toxic environment. It directly contributes to abuse. Well, what do all these criteria have in common? They prioritize experience as much as the moment of consumption. And as web design becomes synonymous with product design, I think it's very important to keep these things in mind. So here, I think, is a reasonable synthesis between user-centric design on the one hand and outcome-centric design on the other. I think of it as the frustration threshold. Jargon, more jargon. Didn't think until I was up here how much jargon I'm adding to the world. How far can we push friction to the point just before it becomes frustration? It's sort of a simple rule of thumb that I think about. Now, where that threshold lies depends on a couple of things. One is the needs of the audience. When the needs of the audience are very specific, the frustration threshold is at a minimum. Like when you're trying to find the address for a restaurant, it sets in almost automatically, like immediately. When there's no specific or urgent desire in mind, the frustration threshold is much farther out. You have room in the interface to allow for play, or mastery, or complexity, or even confusion. There's forgiveness. The other thing the frustration threshold depends on is the size and the makeup of the audience, the scale. The wider the audience, the more total the platform, the less you can anticipate about who's using the site. The more important it is that you build a site that's easy to access by all parties, that's probably easy to use. But the smaller the audience, the more specific the audience, the more traits they share. The more you know about their literacy, the more you can design for their needs, the more you can build an experience that is unique or difficult or complex. So what's the takeaway? Friction is slow and it doesn't scale. But friction and inefficiencies are the components of the medium that allow for expression and meaning. Now, I'm not saying we should go back to this moment of the early web, the sort of like raw naivete of GeoCities, at all. I think we should be addressing specific needs. We should make memorable experiences. We should do this by making use of design's inherent capacity to bring ideas into form, and we should be keeping the user's needs in mind as we do so. Doing that is going to require that we sort of rethink things, and instead of saying, how can I make everything easy to use, we ask just what components can be difficult. Thank you.